we call it Tour Church. And one of the things that it was just kind of laid on my heart was just going, listen, therefore be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain. And we just saying, guys, just finish strong, because this is a beautiful opportunity. Every night is new. Like, we don't just come in and okay, do the same thing. We might do the same thing, but we allow the Spirit to move in a fresh new way. And so I've been excited because it's been a long time coming, and kind of wonder why people ask me why we're doing an I Still Believe tour, because the movie came out 2 years ago. Who saw the movie anyway? I Still Believe. Oh, okay, good. That's good, because you had an I Still Believe experience, so it'd be weird if you didn't see it. But we didn't have an opportunity to actually have a tour after the movie because it came out during COVID.
Yeah.
And so people have been asking me questions constantly about the movie and different things and aspects of it. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do a couple tours, like this spring and this fall probably, on that. Because I'm not gonna just share this, all my life and every tour I do, but it was a special time. And it was such an honor to be able to have that be done. So we wanted you guys to kind of be a part of that a little bit, because we never had it. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna have some pictures. I'm gonna share with you some behind the scene pictures. You saw the behind the scenes, like some footage of that. And then I'll explain some things. And then after that, I'm gonna show you two of my favorite, well, it's really my favorite deleted scene. It's kind of two scenes put in one. And they had to put these scenes, it was hard because it was a 3-hour movie before they cut it down to an hour. So imagine how many scenes they had to cut down.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's an extended version. Director's cut, yeah. I think there's deleted scenes on the DVD, I think, and this is one of them. But it's something that was one of my favorite scenes, and I'll explain it later. You'll kind of watch the scene, you'll be like, wait, what was that? It's kind of like really, yeah. But very emotional, but I'll explain kind of the story behind it. And and my wife was a part of that, and I'll explain that later. So anyway, you guys ready? Let's start off. All right, so here's the first picture. This is my first wife, Melissa. And people have asked me when I do this, they're like, why, isn't that kind of weird? Like, your wife, my wife's on tour right now, which is awesome. And your wife's here, you're showing a picture of your first wife. I'm like, listen, my wife said from the very beginning, she said, listen, I know that this is not about me, it's not about Melissa, it's not about you, it's about Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why she supported my story for years, and she has been such a massive supporter of the film as well. Actually, the reason why the directors said that they were confirmed that they wanted to do a movie in my life was because they had a conversation with Adrian. They're like, she convinced us to do it because she was so supportive behind it. Because can you imagine trying to do a film and the wife's like, he's like, your face, you're like, yeah, no. He's like, no one wants to be a part of that. The wife's like, what are you doing? So that really was like, yeah, she's a massive support. And I think that has been so huge, So next picture. Next picture, sorry, okay. So we had people on the set. This is my son and my wife, Adrian, on the right-hand side. And this is Nicole. They become liaisons helping us out. And one thing I loved about them, they were so sensitive to understanding where we were emotionally. Because you have to understand, there were scenes where they knew, they would say, okay, here's a scene coming up. I'm letting you know that if you want to not come today, and we decided to come pretty much every time. I had to walk out of one scene because I just lost it. Like, I wept and wept and wept. And but the beauty of that was, this kind of stuff, they're watching it being filmed as I wept, and I had to, my wife came and just hugged me, and I went back to watch the filming again. And here is the darkest part of my life, the hardest part of my life being filmed. And I look in front of me, and it's my wife and my 3 kids. And I just went, God, you're faithful. Mm-hmm. They're seeing God's faithfulness in action, because they're like, that happened, but look now what he's done. There's just a beautiful picture of God's faithfulness. So, all right, next picture. This is the scene where we got engaged, and I love this is them talking through this. They so paid attention to detail, because I think that every little detail matters in that, because I think it makes everything so much more authentic. And they did pay attention to every little detail and ask questions constantly. So we're super thankful for that. But next slide here. All right, now this is one of my favorite. Now this is the scene, and I'll explain this. This is the scene where, she's trying to open the jar, she's weak because of the chemo, and she smashes it. And it's a very intense scene, and it was emotional. And I remember, KJ's so good at knowing when to be serious and knowing when to lighten things up because it's been serious. Because this is a scene that they do, every scene they do is shot over and over and over again. So you have to understand, these things we're just being bombarded with things over again. And so this is probably one of the last ones, and he's there and he's, in the scene's cleaning it up, and then he just picks up the pickle and eats it off the floor. And it just created this really good reprieve from the grief and just the intensity of it. So he was like that. All right. I love that he's musical because he would sit around and play piano, he would play guitar. It made it way more, I talk about authenticity because it made it so much more authentic as well. Having someone who actually loved music, and when he played, he actually played. So it felt real. And he would sit around and just play music and be a part of everything. He wasn't like do a scene and then go on the trailer. I mean, he'd hang out, talk to everybody, play music, and it was really incredible. Next scene. Next. Yeah, there we go. So this guy right here, John Gunn, John's one of the writers. He actually also wrote, do you see I Can Only Imagine? Anybody in here? Okay, so that incredible film as well. Same directors, almost the same writers. And once again, just asking every single detail. Like, they gave us the script. Me and my wife were talking about it yesterday, and the first script they gave us, the first writing of the script, which never happens, people always say, yeah, there's a lot of changes after the first script. We got the first script and just were blown away. And we just, like the opening scene, as we're reading it, we just started crying. And I'm like, wow, they captured this so beautifully. So thankful for them. Next. This is us with Britt Robertson. She played Melissa, and we are still friends to this day. She came to a show recently, and it was kind of this cool, almost like 360 of her. I'm playing, and here she is. She plays the role of my first wife, and then I'm singing, and I see her, and I see my wife, and my kids, and her mom, and I'm like, this is incredible. Like, and she even goes, I just didn't even know. Like, she says she grew up knowing some of my music, which is crazy to think about. That's how old I owned it for 20 years. I'm like, oh man, she grew up listening to some of my music. But just didn't really, she goes, oh my word, I just didn't really know. And so she got to see the fullness of how it was 21 years ago that happened and what God has done, since then. So for her, it was also a really sweet moment. Next picture. There's KJ, and he, once again, same thing. He would go, like, I think this was one of the scenes where, like, hey, what did you feel during this time? Like, what was what did you think? What were you saying? What did you feel? He was very serious about playing and doing right with the story. And I think that was such a beautiful testimony of just his heart for it. And he did an amazing job. He was very concerned with making sure it was correct, everything. Okay, this is the last one. Okay, so this is fun because I don't know if you remember in the scene where there's like 30,000 people, like in the beach scene at the very end. So we actually got to shoot at a mainstream festival. They were doing a festival in the same city that we were shooting at the same time. And so they asked, the festival directors, because KJ he's a big actor. All the teenage girls loved KJ. And so they're like, hey, can KJ say hi to the crowd? And they're like, yeah. I said, but we're gonna film something. Can we just film him with a guitar saying hi to the crowd? But the crowd can't put their phones up because there's not phones back then, no smartphones back then. So you had to tell 20,000 girls not to film KJ. So imagine that. They're like, oh man. So he walks up and he just says hi to the crowd, and they're freaking out, so you see this whole thing, and then you hear him saying, okay, look to the right. So he looks to the right so you can see the side of his face, so it shows the crowd. And then they built a stage later and had a small stage and had him sing the whole song, and then a small crowd, and all the close-up shots were that. And it was seamless. It was brilliant. Like, the whole thing was just seamless. But it really was a God thing, because to be able to have a shot with 30,000 people it's unheard of. Like, you have to actually, it would have been $1 million to do that. And so, God's like, hey, I'm gonna allow you to shoot on this little festival day. So just stuff like that always happened constantly, you guys. It was just beautiful. So, all right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play these behind the scenes for you guys, and it's a